Rich. Rich Lovrich began his career as a photographer, graphic artist, and project manager, working out of his own studio in New York City and servicing clients in banking, pharmaceutical, and fashion. As the Albany Times Union's first art director, he spearheaded new sections and won special editions and won awards for illustration, design, and writing. Hired by Proctor's first art director, he ushered the theater through its period of explosive growth and acquisition, eventually serving as a creative director of Proctor's Collaborative, encompassing Proctor's, the REP in, did I say that right? I think I messed that up.
It's just the Rep.
The Rep. Okay, the Rep in Albany with its new location, UPH in downtown Saratoga Springs. Richard is a short story writer, playwright, photographic portraitist, and author of soon-to-be released book, Have a Very Bad Day. So before we go any further, would you please tell us a little bit more about that book?
Oh, yeah, sure.
I don't know.
I know I've shared with this group, I think a couple of years ago, a project I did where I did a portrait every day for 365 days and I called it Makers 365. They're all people in the creative field. And so I like these obsessive projects. And before that project, I had done a project where I wrote 1,000 short stories. And it took a little over 3 years. I did almost one every day, just about every day. And way back then, actually, I started to edit them down. But after writing them all and doing the first edit, I couldn't do it properly. I just couldn't handle it, mentally. They were still too present in my mind, and I couldn't judge them properly. And then I revisited it about a year ago, and I've been bumping through it and just been through the final edits, and it's off to the printer awaiting the first proof. So I'm very excited. About 300 stories made the cut. I hope to be in your bathroom soon, is what I meant to say, in the nicest way.
All right. So welcome, everybody. It's our general and monochrome competition for February. I'm going to share my screen here in a second. Hold on. All right. You see that, Rich?
I see it perfectly, yes.
Okay. Hold on 1 second now. All right. We'll start with our general category. Tonight we have 32 entries. I believe we had 5 places and 2 honorable mentions. All right. So we'll start first up is New Mexico Scene. New Mexico Scene, Ray Hendrickson. Rich?
Oh, hi. How are you? Okay, so I forgot how we did this again. So
yes.
we're not actually going through the winners at this time necessarily. We're just
we
going
go
through
through
each
all the images.
Yeah, this is a great spot, isn't it? And of course, what makes it there are a couple things that make this shot interesting, I think, and one is the natural set of layers that come up because of atmospheric conditions, which is always such a gift, right? And it seems annoying because you can't cut through it with some UV, but in this case, I think it does add charm and a theatrical element, because that back row of mountains looks like there's a scrim in front of it, so it's very theatrical. And I really like that enigmatic little, first of all, the enigmatic little dip in the mountain in the foreground, and especially the architectural ones in the back. So yeah, that was a nice day's shoot.
Okay, next up is,
I don't know what is that thing in the foreground? Do we know?
Do not know.
The black thing. I couldn't quite tell. Is the photographer on with us?
Ray is here, yes.
Hey, Ray. What is that black thing?
In the foreground, there's a lot of shrubs. I don't see anything. There's no building or anything there.
Oh, do you see what I'm talking about? Right in the center of the frame, there's almost like it looks like a black poodle.
Like that?
In the grass?
No,
it's probably
just a shrub.
Just a shrub. Okay.
Hey, our next one is Here's looking at you, Ron Hearden.
Yeah, there were a lot of particularly good nature and animal pictures, so it was a little tough this time, but and none of them were actually subpar. It's always tough. I'll like always. I'll say it once and have to say it again and again. It's very difficult. Actually, with some contests, it's extremely easy to pick the favorites, but with your contests, it tends not to be so because the quality of the work is generally really high. And so this is a really well taken photograph. I love the fact that it was recomposed into a square. It might even be cropped a little tighter from the bottom and the right to really reinforce this concentric swirl thing, because it really is, and it points to an eye. So it's a good shot, but also the post is nicely thought out. We can't always judge the pictures perfectly in this digital world, but it would be nice to try to tamp down that highlight on the horn in the foreground on the lower part. I think it just makes the picture, because the eye goes right to that piece of overexposed horn, and I can't speak for that particular camera or the software that you're using, but it might be nice to try to bring that down a little bit so it doesn't, because there's no reason for it to attract that much attention. But it's a nice shot, and again, it was very smartly recropped to make it more fun, frankly.
Okay, next up is Stockade Parade, Rich Schreibstein.
Yeah, nice colors, obviously, and there's some movement. Not my favorite moment, if you will. I'm a Leica guy, so I'm all about the moment. So we caught her with her head kind of in a tree. So that detracts for me loving it. But I love typical scenes. I love street photography. I belong to a club, an online club of Leica portraitists. It's about 11,000 people, I think. And I contribute actually one picture every day. And that's one of since I can't photograph people because of masks now as much as I enjoy, that's one way I get it out of my system. And there are some people that are just, I think this is a...
Are you seeing the full picture? All I'm seeing is a woman, with a stroller. Is that all you're seeing?
That's all
That's
I'm
all we're
saying.
seeing. That's all there was.
Yeah.
Oh no. Well,
so it is. It is cropped a little tight, and again
it's
the
not the
moment.
whole picture.
It's not the whole picture.
Oh, it's missing. There were kids walking in parade. Behind her.
I remember that now. I can call that up if you want me to.
Can you? Yeah, that's.
If you want to give me the screen for it, can you give me the screen and go back again? I don't know.
Yeah, that's really cropped. That wasn't anywhere near the photo.
That is as it was when I pulled it in.
Really?
Yeah, no, it's not.
It can't be.
I
mean,
agree,
that's not
'cause
what
I do remember
that's not
the
what
other.
got sent back when I posted it.
Okay.
Yeah, that's all right. Don't. Yeah. Now there's two kids to the rear of the lady with the carriage.
Yeah, Rich, that's why I didn't really discuss the cropping of this. I just knew something had gone wrong.
Yeah,
the cropping of this is obviously kooky, but the real shot is
it's
not.
It's not the shot.
But
Okay,
the
go
kids
ahead.
are pretty. The kids are pretty great. I just wish her head hadn't been hitting a tree. But again, I consider street photography, especially with multiple people in it, to be one of the most demanding and least rewarding, kind of photo shoots you can possibly. Yeah, there you go. The kids are great. They add a Rockwell kind of sense to the picture.
Yeah.
And again, I just wish that it hadn't happened at that moment, or maybe if we could see the mom's face a little better. But I still really enjoy. It was brave of you, hitting the street with a camera and photographing strangers and trying to figure out. With Leicas, everyone has their guide of what f-stop with what Summicron or Summilux and exactly where you should have your hand. The rumor it always was that the knob that you use to focus the lens on a Leica, that you keep it at the bottom for street photography, and that's why it was exactly at that spot. I actually haven't tried that. I have a friend that I actually was a grammar school friend with, Richard. My name is Richard Anthony Loveridge. His name is Richard Anthony Handwork, and he does it all the time, and he has an amazing but he has an amazing eye, yes, but I know he spends an awful lot of time on the street. It's tough. We should all do it more, frankly, because it gets your nerve up and it keeps you agile with your relationship with your controls and your camera and with other people. It's really kudos for going out there and trying it. It's one of the toughest things, in my opinion.
Sorry about that, Rich. I don't know how it got pulled into Lightroom that way.
We're trying to sabotage you, Rich.
Trying to sabotage you, Rich. There you go. Well, he did see the original image, so it's not really sabotage. All right, hold on. Next up is Basket. Anyone? Claudia Jakubowski.
That's a really pretty set of baskets, and I'm big time portrait guy now, but many years ago, I really didn't do very many portraits at all, and I traveled a lot with photography commercially, and this is the kind of image that I enjoyed capturing myself. I love texture implied by objects or completely supplied by the objects. And this is a particularly tasty set of objects, right? They're so beautiful. And there's this weird, it may be just the way it was processed or it was really there, but there's a weird chiaroscuro kind of lighting on it too. That's kind of almost patchy, which really makes it more fun. Because when we're shooting out there in a real market or doing people in the street, we can't control the lighting. And this is a case where you couldn't get the lighting much better, really. I'm not sure that I'm completely happy with the crop because, down on the bottom by the black basket, there's that gap on both sides and my eye keeps going there. I wonder if we need those front baskets because they're not adding much to the picture. I wonder what would happen if we started just at the purple basket or making it a square. I think it's such a wonderful, unavoidable jumble of color and shape and curves that I don't want to be taken out of it. And I feel like those three baskets in the front that aren't doing much with the space between them is really in a way taking away from it. But just a lovely, makes me want to be there too, which is pretty good for a set of baskets.
Okay, next up is the end of the fall season, Marguerite Hill.
Where was this actually? Where was it taken?
I don't know if Marguerite's here. Don't think she's here.
Okay, well, autumn's always awesome, of course. I hate bare trees. This does a pretty good job of avoiding the worst parts of bare trees because you're cropping them. But there are a few things about the photo I think that make it's not that the one branch that follows the hillside exactly. That's a weird, distracting thing. I don't know what I'm supposed to look at there because they're on the same exact line with one another. So I guess I'm looking for either the story of this or the real compositional strength. It falls short a little bit of those definitions, if you will. It doesn't have an actual. It's a picture, and I'm not sure it rises to the level of being like a real nature photograph. It's more of a picture of a place, certainly. And I don't really know what those things are in the foreground. Kind of want them to be something, the man-made things, or I don't want them to be there at all. So again, a little unsatisfying in those ways.
Okay, next up is No Admittance, Nancy Funtner.
I like pictures of strange. There's a photographer in the capital region called Rod LaCure, I think his name is. He's a graphic artist. And he takes pictures pretty much exclusively of abandoned signs on buildings. And it's pretty amazing. And again, I love graphics. So this is strangely cropped. It's a graphic thing. I dig it for that reason. I like the fact that we're cropping in on it, and yet there's something it's a tricky aspect ratio. So in a sense, I'd almost rather see more of it and have to find the factory no admittance myself. I understand the urge. I'm a graphic artist as well as a photographer, so I certainly understand the urge of cropping. But there's something about this cropping that just, I wish I could see more. But But again, I love crappy old signs, so I have a weakness in that spot.
Okay, next up is Father and Son, Marguerite Hill.
They are cute animals. Yeah, we don't get many cows, right? You get dogs, you get cats. I'm part of another group for Leica people that take pictures of cats and dogs. And actually, just today, someone said, "Why do we have to have only cats and dogs?" And they had a picture of a cow today. So in commemoration of this photograph, it could be a pet cow. Nice photograph. Not. I like the sun in the background. There's a little. The composition's not bad, certainly, but these are the things that plague all of us, right? He's got a little bit of like tree growing out of his head. There may have been a way to use the aperture to soften the background and therefore not introduce the opportunity for those elements to come into play as much with our cow. He's a really handsome cow or a bull or whatever. But then you'd lose the sun a little, I guess. But still, I want a little more separation, and I'd rather the sun was maybe more implied, or maybe when I looked at this, I wondered if you'd start to lose the sun at some point. Sun, S-O, not the sun in the sky, the sun cow. But if you moved maybe to the right, so you had the sun against the barn, or waited until the cow moved, because having the sun also against those distracting doors really. It kind of makes it less important that the sun is there. So I'd rather have a great picture of the fore cow than try to tell the bigger story. I tend to be a shallow depth of field person with my portraits, sometimes to a degree that's probably not the best decision but I tend to default to that because I do find extraneous background elements that stick out of people's heads to be really annoying in my own work.
Next up is Night Visitor, Lena Kesey.
People or cows. That's a really cute picture of. I like possums. We all like possums, right? And it's a flash picture, which they usually don't work that well, but flash works particularly well with fur-bearing animals and fur-bearing people too. We used to use ring lights, medical ring lights. At the time, there were no photographic ring lights in the 70s. So we used to use medical ring lights with the film pushed to its absolute limit and to capture women in furs in the 70s and get that kind of photo look. So yeah, the fur, it really captures the possum really nicely. And it's pretty nicely composed too. I know this happened in a fleeting moment. It would have been also awesome if we could have gotten, I think, eye level with the possum, shooting straight across it. I think it might have been even more compelling from that angle. But it is I don't know, you might lose his nose in the crack of the gourd, but certainly an interesting moment. I've had possums, but I've never grabbed my camera to shoot them, so kudos. I could also suggest you should have a backlight on it, but you never have an assistant and a backlight when you need them, especially when you're chasing possums.
Okay, next up is Red Berries, Joe Catronio.
There are quite a few black and white too. There's some really good macro photography, and it just gets better and better with our equipment. These shots used to be a lot harder to take. It's a lovely shot of a really interesting plant. In the background, of course, it's super thrown out, the background, which I like, and it's nice in that it blends from that brown to the green color. I would like. It's my playful. It's cropped almost a little bit too tight, and I love tight crops. I guess it becomes a picture like it. This is a perfect, by the way, illustration of this plant, right? I mean, this in the book with the name of whatever this plant is at this point in its life, you couldn't really hope for a better picture. So it's obviously super competent and really detailed and captures the colors really beautifully. But we're here. This is more about photography as an entertainment, right? And to allure people. So something maybe a little wider that played off the kind of Japanese kind of composition for this element might have carried the day better as far as pure art. But it's a great photograph.
Okay, next up is Beach Umbrella, Kim Koza.
I really like taking pictures of umbrellas at beaches and the challenge of having these highly lit things against other backgrounds. So again, a very strange crop. Probably a great idea here for this shot. It's very interesting. There are interesting things going on in the sky as well. It's amazing what happens when we stop down too far, right? I'm sure a picture of a beachgoer taken at this exposure and shutter speed at the same moment would be a real disappointment unless the person was extremely pale. So this is one of those cases where capturing something accurately changes our perception of the world around it and makes the sky so dramatic. So it is, and also the way the wind is being captured in the flaps. So it's a lovely moment. And again, it brought me to the beach, which is that's a plus.
Okay, next up is Table for One, Carol Bell.
You know, I see here in this composition a desire to, I think, or the way I feel about it is to revisit paintings of sets of objects on tables. It is we talk about things that are easy to do and difficult to do. It is, painters have many techniques that they can employ which aren't particularly honest, right, to exactly what's going on, that they do to make these scenes work. And they are, I think, particularly difficult to do really well with photography. They really do call upon, you need to use a very long lens often, or a longish lens, in order to flatten them out and give it that painterly quality. It really, the exact composition of things, like even, let's say, look at the dishes. We're headed towards somewhere where I've really thought a lot about this. If you look at the dishes in the foreground, they're where they probably need to be for a person, and yet there's just the glass doesn't exactly pop out. It is super, and this is being done with natural light. This is exactly the kind of experiment, exactly the kind of project that we should all, at whatever level of our practice, be doing, because this really challenges you to get it right. And I wouldn't say this is right yet, but it's worth the effort. And I know Sarah, she changed her name just recently because she got married, so you can't find her on Facebook. There's a photographer in Round Lake, and her name is Sarah, and it was Pesdak before she changed it. And she ventures here, and she's a master. She is really quite an amazing photographer, and she sold at galleries across the country. And I know it's not easy for her either, and she does some still lives. I would say keep at it. It's really worth doing. It's, again, doing it in everything you're doing here is extremely commendable, including trying to shoot it in available light as well. When I had my studio in New York City, it's funny, we had, who died this week? Which politician? Can't remember.
Which all of them had.
Schultz. Schultz died this week, right? I photographed Schultz and Kissinger, Schlesinger, Schultz, and Gerald Ford in Manhattan at the same photo session one year. And it was really simple. I wasn't going to be able to trick around a lot. There was a tremendous amount of demand on me to get a lot of shots done in a very short period of time. So I won't bore you with all the details, but I would, as I had done before, I went to the museum and I sat in front of a John Singer Sargent painting for a few hours with a sketch pad. And again, painters can cheat, but I tried to let that guide me. And this is a case where really staring at paintings can help you to improve what you're doing, and trying to trick a camera into being as clever and adaptable as a painter can be with their objects. It's super admirable. But I ended up hand painting backgrounds for President Ford. I still have them in one version or another in my basement. I've painted over them, but there's still the base coats under there. I painted them so that they would have a painterly look in the end, although they were pretty commercial and schmaltzy. They were just pictures of bankers with these famous people. And Gerald Ford was a jerk. That was my big takeaway from the day.
Next up is Fishing Eagle, Shauna Kaywood.
This is a crazily, amazingly captured moment. What is that? If she's, oh, Jana, what is that weird thing that's in the bottom of the frame? Was that on the glass? Oh, it's an American flag. I only noticed that now. Where was that? Where did that element? Was that a reflection in the window?
It's a composite.
Oh.
So they're all. I went to a farm one day and I took a picture of the corn. You can see the corn in there. That's what
I actually don't see any corn.
There's corn in front of the flag, and there was a barn.
It might not come across well on the Zoom.
Yeah, I didn't see it in the digital. We have these issues, right? Sometimes with the slightly lower resolution in these digital environments. What is that other shape under the point of the eagle's wing? If you come down, that thing. What is that?
The barn. There's a barn.
See, I didn't know what they were.
You can see the corn here.
Yeah. Oh, I see now. Thank you for waving. Okay, this is cool. This is obviously a great shot of an eagle. I'm, of course, not at all averse to photo compositions, but was the eagle photographed against that building with the windows?
No.
Yeah, so that's part of
He was flying over the Hudson.
Yeah, so you've really, it's not obvious to me. To me, I thought, wow, this is effing amazing. She caught this eagle flying by this barn, right? It really is. And there's a lot of graphic stuff going on here. And I think for me, certainly, someone actually today in the Leica group asked the group, and we got into a little conversation about how the exposure in his shots. He had a wedding on a beach. And I think what he showed was pretty accurate to this very dusky picture of a couple on the beach. And yet, in social media, when you transfer those images on a bright background screen in Facebook, they frankly look too dark and don't represent that well. And they're probably perfect for a gallery, but they don't work very well on Facebook. And I would say here, too, that your special effects need to be more upfront, more obvious to us. So it's not as, and it's also, it's a very specific, you're trying to get across a very specific message. I wouldn't be shy about it. I would be more bold in the way you interlace them. You have some good photographs. The flag looks nice, and the flag looks better here than it did when I blew it up on. Again, I apologize. It was a technical thing. I couldn't even tell it was a flag. I could only see the white stripes the way it came up on my machine. So again, I wouldn't be as shy about. And also, you might have too many elements. I know you're trying to tell a story, but it's a story, right? And
America.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. What was that?
Oh, it's good. America.
Yeah, exactly. Well, maybe just the eagle and the flag, right? The building, I'm not sure what the building has to do with America, because I've seen buildings like that in Russia. No, just kidding. It really, again, the flag and the eagle would probably be enough for that. And the corn, that's pretty high level graphic art. And again, it's hard to get all those elements to show up at the same time. And again, I'm sorry, but technological, especially with the technological hurdle we have here, it doesn't show it as well. And your awesome picture of the eagle doesn't show as well because of it. But I'd love to see this again with the eagle with the flag more defined up front, and probably without the house, because I don't think the house adds anything to your message of America. And
It's
without
barn.
it, I'm sorry, barn or
Yeah,
house.
it's the barn.
Yeah. But that's it. That would be my take. And again, because we're in this kind of flattened media world, I would definitely pull the flag out so we could see it more clearly.
Thank you.
Next up is a really big bird, Linda Tomasulo.
What a pretty little creature, right? In the snow. He's really cute, and he looks like a letter Q, which is really bizarre. That's a lovely. My dog chases the squirrels all over our yard all the time, so I've become a squirrel expert because of my dog. Yeah, that's a nice picture of a squirrel, and the background is nicely handled as well. I see that there's some snow on top of the, which is cropped off. I don't know. I always like to see a little more, unless maybe cropped a little tiny bit tighter or opened up a tiny bit more to see what's happening beyond that snow. But it's a great moment, and I know they move very quickly, so I know how difficult it is. That's a cute shot. And well exposed as well. But snow helps with that, right? On a snowy day with snow all around, you really do get awesome fill. You'd be difficult to get a shot like this in the summer with all the distraction of the grass and the darkness all around it, and the squirrel would be more contrasty. The snow is really helping the photographer out here, holding a giant light box up to help in the photograph, which is very cool.
Okay, next up is what is in your kitchen? Carol Bell.
What pretty purple potatoes. There was a time in photography in the 70s, really, when I was active with my studio in New York in the 70s and 80s. And it was very difficult to take and then print without any dust pictures like this. So people's portfolios always had, it was always tomatoes or cherries in a black bowl or on black formica. And this really brought me back. And it also has a lovely museum quality to it because of the, frankly, the choice of these heirloom potatoes. But the shiny background especially is the shiny surface is very 70s. And it's just it's very well done. It's lovely, has lovely colors as well. And I like the texture of the potatoes. This is a great classroom again. It's difficult because you're working, you want to show some background, but this is a place, when I photographed food more often, I carried a case with me, and I had mirrors, small mirrors and small reflectors, white, silver, and actual mirrors. And some of them were actually the circle mirrors from lipsticks that I would hot glue a piece of sculptural wire onto just to hit a tiny spot on like that potato. Again, like we were talking about chiaroscuro before, lighting that kind of breaks up and creates some visual interest. So it'd be fun to continue this kind of series and you have a wonderful source of light, and it's being hidden from us in the reflection. There's just a lot going on here that's great. It'd be a lot of fun to also maybe use some small reflectors to pick out some fine details. When you're doing food, this is perfectly lit for what it is. But most food, of course, is a bowl of something wet or meat. And I'll give you here's the one Richard Loveridge tip that other photographers have thanked me for, and that is light from behind and fill from the front. That's pretty much it. That's it. That's my $500 photo class. That'll give you excellent food photography in almost every situation. And when you watch the way better food shows on television that have the best videography, you'll notice that is the technique that they employ to make food look the most tasty. But it might not that it wouldn't work here, but this is a perfect example because these, in a sense, they're not food, right? They're these objects of art that are quite beautiful. Again, they're well chosen. Did you grow these yourself, whoever this is? Is this?
Oh, no.
Carol? Hey,
They're
Carol.
from the farmer's market.
Yeah, they're really cool.
But they are, I did eat them shortly thereafter. So.
Yeah, you should do more of this kind of work. This kind of work is the kind of work that a series of them makes them stronger. Sometimes a series of things makes the individual elements seem more boring. But in this kind of case, a series like this would actually be pretty awesome. I don't remember how it was originally cropped on the background, but I think I wanted the sides pulled in a little bit, but not that much. And again, if you had pictures of heirloom tomatoes and other farm goods all shot the same way, it would make a really lovely series.
Oh,
I'll work on it all year. Trust me.
It really is worth it. They're pretty, very pretty.
Very-
What did you shoot it with?
Do you mean the black acrylic is the reflective? And I've used my macro lens, 100 macro lens,
Oh, nice.
and the lighting is the biggest challenge. I'm not really
Yeah.
with the shine, but I get better every time I shoot it. I get a little better. So
You know, this shot, just like the dishes or the baskets, really you can't spend your time with because they were someone else's in someone else's environment, probably. But these, again, these are school for us. You know, they sit there. They're very demanding. Nothing just happens, right?
Yep.
Everything that's beautiful that you gain, you do it yourself, including keeping the fruit fresh so it doesn't dry out. It is this is a demanding work that you learn a lot from. So again, it's the kind of work that we should all do more often. I have lots of pictures of glasses of tequila. I'll leave it right there. It's something that I am often faced with, and I have lots of them. And it's delightful to try to make something work with the available light that you have, but it's also wonderful to. I assume this was artificial light.
oh yes, my kitchen
Yeah.
is completely black, and
Yeah.
I shoot it in the kitchen because it is, and then I
Cool.
only use the softbox, which is beneficial, and it takes me all day to do these shots because
Yeah.
lighting and stuff is very educational. You're absolutely right.
Ain't easy, and it's also not easy to clean those surfaces properly, right?
Are horrendous.
Horrendous.
I have black velvet in the back. And I'm sure I'm battling black, but the black velvet is the biggest challenge because I
Yeah.
can't get it clean enough ever to get it spotless. So I have to always.
Well, you also can't get the good stuff anymore. This is like a drug conversation.
Yeah.
And years ago, I was able to buy from a fabric store that got seconds from theatrical productions and from theater curtains in Manhattan. And they would get 100% cotton black velvet that I would never clean. And it was the blackest thing. You could shine a light right on it. And it had no, our synthetic black velvets, if you have a curl in it, there's always a shine that, follows the curl in some way. That stuff, you couldn't get it to light up. But even in it was probably the early 80s, I couldn't get it anymore. Maybe there's some way to get it now because of the internet, and you can have cast your net further. But you're right, it is very hard. I had black Formica. I had black Formica from Europe that was silkscreen with little tiny box grid on it. I had white Formica, and actually the most challenging surface I had, because you can't shoot medications on a mirror. I mean, unless that's the effect you want, because mirrors have depth, right? You're looking through glass and there's a distortion. So I had sheets of stainless steel. And if you cleaned it with a tissue, you scratched it.
Wow.
And there was no retouching back then. So I had to have a fresh sheet of stainless steel for any photo shoot that I did. And my assistant, Bobby, he would get a bottle, like an injectable solution or something, and just put it gently down on the stainless. And if he moved it or twisted it in place, it would scratch the surface of the sheet of stainless.
We're not doing that in my kitchen. So we're
Really, I mean, the results were pretty amazing and wonderful, but boy, again, you took yourself to school.
Well, that's a good way to put this. I really
Yeah.
enjoy it, and it's a challenge, but at the end of the day, I'm awfully tired.
Yeah.
So, thank you very much. I really appreciate your comments.
All right. Next up is Weather Station, Joe Catronio.
I said before, I didn't do a lot of portraits, so I did objects. And one thing that really interested me for a long time, actually, was boring pictures. I was quite the guy. It was a very 70s thing for some reason. And I loved taking boring pictures. Coffee pot just sitting there. And this is a boring picture, but it has great tones. It's a lovely object. But it's not particularly interesting in any way. It doesn't say. But then again, it's almost like that object on the wall is of course it may still function, but it's basically, it's a decorated antique thing. and then you're taking a picture, which is a box around it, and it's a skillful picture of it. But it doesn't tell us a lot extra. But again, it doesn't need to. I like pictures of things that are just being what they are. There was a very odd, almost a punk aesthetic to having pictures of things that are just being themselves and with no extra layer. Again, having said that, it is nicely taken. The tones are properly controlled. The background, that wall is nicely painted and nicely captured. So I like looking at it. And what lens, what focal length was used on this? Do we know roughly?
I think that was about 85 millimeters.
Wow, 85. Wow, that's a pretty flat field lens. You can see it slightly curving, ever so slightly maybe on the bottom, but that's pretty. I took pictures for Seagrams.
55 to be exact.
I'm sorry?
55 to be exact.
Wow,
It was
that's a
55?
really
Okay,
flat.
somewhere.
That's a
85.
flat field lens, and that's a testament. I took pictures for Seagrams of bottles for them, and they would want I took one picture of every single alcohol that they made, every single thing in one picture with 4x5, a giant thing, and I won't go. I could talk for 2.5 hours about that one photograph because it took us 20, 30 hours to take it. And one thing that was particularly troublesome, of course, is distortion, right? And exactly at that
I had to do a little bit of correction here.
There you go. Exactly at that time that I was taking this picture, for just a wonderful gift, an art director friend gave me a book, and it was a Navy manual on photography from World War II. And of course it referred to 4x5 because they were using 4x5s, right? And it actually said, like, below this focal length, that it was pictures of, it was pictures of bombs, pictures of shells, large, like artillery shells.
Yeah,
and it showed how, like, forget trying and forget your angle, and how you could not get a good picture of them until you had a lens of X focal length. So, this kind of picture, I'm actually a weird fan of blandness. This kind of picture works really well with an extra long lens. Like if you took this with a 200, it would flatten it. People wouldn't know why they liked it so much, but it would have this weird, like laid on a Xerox machine kind of feeling to it.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's not the way we see, right? We do see things somewhat distorted ourselves. So actually getting things to be perfectly accurate in a picture is really a distortion of our perceptions. So when you get them it would be fun to take a picture, the same picture again, with a 200 millimeter lens, let's say. And you'll see, it's a subtle difference, but that's what we're all about here, right?
I did it sitting on the floor, so a 200 millimeter, I have to get up pretty high.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's none of this is easy. But some lenses have incredibly flat fields as well. You could have a lens as short as Nikon has certain 50s that are not the sexy ones. They're not the biggest apertures, but they're really good at copying. And that's what those lenses, like a lot of macro lenses. A lot of macro lenses are really flat field.
Right.
It's an obscure number, and with digital cameras, we get into so many things now that I see a lot about vignetting and whatever, but people don't talk as much as I would like when you're talking about flatness of field. Flatness of field can also make a portrait seem not that great sometimes, right? A 300 millimeter fashion shot is a great thing, but sometimes for a portrait, it's a little, do you know what I mean? It's too, right. Yeah. Again, it doesn't make a person seem very human. So I like a lens about 85. I use my 90 a lot with my Leica, and it's a beautiful lens, but it's a little too perfect. I'm actually in the market now. I've been looking at some of the Chinese lenses, 7 Artisans, which is about $350. And there's a Voigtlander, which is more dear. It's pretty expensive. It's $899. But it's way not $12,000, which is what Leica wants for their 75 of the same aperture. So no, I cannot sell my car to do that. So, but I like 75 for portraits. We should do an entire thing on portraits one day, and we should do an extended contest, then we could talk, because that's an area that I really love to spend more time with. with you guys.
Okay. Next up is Blue Felt Table, Rich Schreibstein.
This is a picture of like an interesting space. I would say I'm not exactly sure what. It's modern art, that's for sure. If it's anything particularly, it's modern art because it certainly does not have any traditional elements of like cat in the foreground, girl in the foreground, guy. The table's not where it should be if it was a picture of a table. So it is a, it's almost like a Mondrian, type thing because these vertical elements and the tubes going across, they make it into a piece of art of that kind. There's also that big white area on the right. So it is a little difficult to understand what the is. Who is that? Rich?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what did you want us to look at or take away?
Well, the difficulty was this is shot through a window. I was walking downtown. It's across the street from the Washington Avenue Armory. And there's this big white building, if you're familiar with the area. And I was watching a guy walk by, and the building interested me so much. I walked over, and I had to put my lens right up against the glass.
Yeah.
And then you have to move it around to get what you want in it. And this is what was there. It was the building appeared to have been abandoned. Obviously, there were no people. There was nothing else going on. But I liked the lines.
Yeah.
And I thought that the table to the left there sort of was the key element. And
Right.
I liked the shadow coming off of the white wall on the right. And then, of course, you got your pool cues leaning up against there, and the doorway in the back, and the couch, and then the staircase coming down with the banister, and it just like the whole composition.
Yeah, it's certainly airy and non-traditional, and those are the things I like. This picture benefits a lot from having its like parallax corrected well, doesn't it? I mean, it would either have to be, in other words, way off and distorted, or this way. You can't be almost usually. That's a bad idea. So that's a strength of this picture, and it really, those strong uprights really help keep us positioned. Yeah, the lens up against the glass. I hate doing it with my camera, but it is actually the way, the best way to do it is to have two people with black velvet in poles standing in back of you. I had clients in Manhattan I shot windows for, and we had a rig with.
Usually I don't take a bunch of people when I'm.
You need people, and you need
have to
fabric
invite
and
some
poles.
people along. Yeah, yeah, that wouldn't look strange at all downtown. Yeah.
I mean, it's not. It's actually refreshing to see a picture with an unusual composition. So,
thanks.
Okay, next up is Kinderjink Windmill. I don't know if I said that right, but Phil Oliva.
Yeah, where is this place? It's beautiful. Is Phil there? No.
Yeah, this is in Holland.
Wow, it's amazing, Phil.
Thank you.
The tree is really the sky's nice. We're holding it pretty much. The tree is like it's distracting me from the windmill, and I know it's very nice to have the path leading into the windmill. That part I like a lot, but having the tree there is not doing anything for me, and it's that kind of tree you see through a lot. I don't know. It doesn't have enough leaves in it to create an element out of it, so it's almost like a screen you're looking through. I mean, again, this is when we're out there. I've spent hours walking around trees deciding, am I going to shoot through the leaves? Am I going to use the leaves as a foreground element? Am I going to have them out of focus, into focus? This is what drives our spouses and significant others crazy, right? When we're on vacations and we spend hours with a windmill and a tree. But I love being taken to special places in photographs, and often they can be next door. But in this case, I assumed it was probably not. It was in a beautiful place. I would also suggest perhaps that this might be a fun image to play with in post, and that's what I'll do sometimes. I'll come home with the picture that I couldn't get exactly the way I wanted it, and then I'll retouch it to death and try to get the picture that I would have wanted. And I don't always show them to anybody. They're more of an experiment, but like extending the grass on both sides and cleaning it up and throwing the foreground out of focus a little artistically can be really cool. I had a filter for it was ostensibly for a Hasselblad. I had a rare Rollei 6006, which was like a Hasselblad size. It was a 120 camera, and they had a filter for it that was for Hasselblad or Rollei, and mine was bayonet for my camera. And what it was I think the filter was $350 in the 70s, and the filter was a sheet of perfect glass, and into it were little tiny lenses randomly placed all over the glass. So it threw the picture in and out of focus randomly. And it gave you the most beautiful, because there was no Photoshop, right? So it gave you a sharp picture of, let's say, a portrait of a banker, but with these beautiful soft tones to it. And I've actually made my own filters like that for people that have Photoshop or a photo editing software. I've actually made my own filters by punching holes in a picture like this and putting it on top of another picture and having a blur so that the picture is both sharp and out of focus at the same time. So I would love to see this. This is to me, this is a canvas into which I would like to experiment and get rid of the tree, play around with getting the sky even better than it was available to you on that day. Again, it's a great object, and it's worth playing with.
Okay. Next up is Birmingham Lake in Winter. Dennis Johnston.
This is a really pretty moment. It's nicely captured. It's just that magical, these pictures. Was this a long exposure in actual darkness, or was it on the way to dark? Do we know?
Oh,
Is the photographer there? Probably not. Dennis?
I don't think he's
Okay. Well, we can't tell. And I'm assuming there might be some bleed over from city light. It's just it's lovely. To me, it all, I like the street lamps that are captured in it. It's cropping a picture like this and leveling it. To me, I have a terrible sense, by the way, of the horizon in my own photographs. I suck at that. And it really takes a lot of concentration from me. I have to really stop and do like a meditation and just stop and try to concentrate on where the horizon is. Because in this picture, I feel like it's only a couple of degrees, but the trees are leaning to the right to me slightly, a degree or so. It isn't much. And sometimes it's just the way the trees grew. But I feel like if they were pushed back to the left a tiny bit, that it would capture my eye a little better. It's also, excuse me, it's always very difficult to decide where to crop these pictures. This is almost a 50-50 reflection of them. And I think that was probably the experiment. But it's not quite 50-50 either. So again, it's not a do or die kind of thing, but this is the kind of shot where the lighting is difficult and so many things are going right that it's the time to decide exactly what story it is that you wanted to tell. And if you wanted to do 50-50, it would be nice to have the whole 50-50 in it. And if not, to crop it a little more and make the best out of the reflection and then the complete trees, or vice versa. So to me, there's a little bit of like decision making here. But it's certainly another shot that brings us to a very beautiful place where the photographer was.
Okay. Next up is Taking Flight, Sean Sullivan.
Yeah, that's a great. As soon as I saw this picture, I took a picture in Schenectady at the park, and there was a duck sitting there for the entire shoot. And I picked up my camera, and all of a sudden, he was just like, okay, he has the camera, and he took off, and I captured him. I captured his butt just like this. So, yeah, I'm not, I have a lot of patience. I've spent 30 hours, multiple days, months actually on one photograph at my studio. I did other things, but I kept revisiting it. It took 3 months to take the picture. A longer story for a different day. I'll bring it the next time. But nature it's really hard to get a lot of things right. I'm not as crazy about the whole composition of the picture, but again, the whole thing was about capturing that bird as it went by. So it's a pretty cool picture. Richard, were you recropping with your hand? What were you doing?
No, this is mine.
Oh, but I saw Richard with his hand in the picture.
Nope.
Yes, yes, exactly. I was looking
See?
if he had just cut off some of the top part.
Yeah,
and
that's
just
what I'm
kept-
wondering too.
Just kept the
Yeah.
water line.
This is cropped down from a much larger.
Yeah, I assumed.
because-
Yeah.
and it was also tilted because it was like a grab because I had just walked up to pick up this bird and he decided, okay, I'm leaving, and so I just grabbed it as best I could.
It is super crisp. What f-stop was that?
I don't remember. Hold on a second.
Has to be really
I can't tell because it's
Right.
it's a cropped and
right.
and so it lost all its excellent.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
would
it's-
say I shot it probably. I shot this like in F5.6.
It's really sharp for that. You know, I agree with Rich about cropping it down from the top a little bit. I would say just even getting rid of that brown line on top of the house, the bit of roof. There's just not enough roof to say it's roof, and there's not enough for it to be anything else. So if you crop that down, I think our eyes would not be distracted. It's difficult. Again, you had this magic moment with this bird. You couldn't help the fact that there's a house that has a human face on it in the background. You know, you have a house with eyeballs and a mouth that's winking at you. So the background is not your friend here. It's beautiful by itself, actually, but it definitely is saying, don't look at the bird. Look at the house that looks like a face in the background.
Well, this was connected to Central Park, so yeah.
Was it also? Oh, wow, that's great. Yeah, my picture of a bird. I guess the birds there are very cooperative,
They are.
photography-wise.
They don't like my drone though. Anyway, next image is.
Boy, that's a whole nother world.
Yeah.
Drones.
Next up is Marjorie Glacier, Dennis Johnson. Thought that was a person.
Yeah, I remember, was it last year? I think we had a picture like this that was particularly bizarre and wonderfully. That's a beautiful shot, and it's a great moment. It's hard to control. You know, this is our Ansel Adams moments things, right? And it might have been better to capture it in such a manner that the whites were a little better handled, and the foreground hillock became just a completely undifferentiated black thing in the foreground. But again, you know, there are a lot of factors here. We're not always in control. I mean, how many times have you taken a picture of a sky that looked so beautiful, but the camera could not capture the whiteness of that cloud, and you just couldn't do it no matter what your adjustments. And so I wish I could see a little more of what is beautiful and white. And again, I apologize if our technology here is making something look not exactly like it is, and we are losing something. But it's nicely composed. Having said that, it is lovely composed. I would almost, because I like this kind of shot. This to me looks like an album cover from like an Icelandic like emo band. You know, it's got a really cool mood to it. I would like to see almost the left-hand most peak that's in there. I would almost like it cropped a little bit so I didn't see that texture on top of it, because I don't want to look over there. I want to look straight down the pipe. I don't want to be distracted this is why we need to look at the work of like Ansel Adams. He has incredibly complicated pictures, but they're incredibly complicated, and yet we know exactly where to look. And so it's again, a lot of this is school, right? We're always at school. I really like and this I remember in the picture, and I think it was last year, that little strip of white in the water that's being picked up from that piece of sky. That is lovely. And I would even tease out some of the highlights there in that foreground strip, because then this is taking on a very painterly, and we shouldn't, because we can't actually capture what we're seeing, because cameras are not people, and they are not lenses, and pickup elements they're not eyes. So we're not telling the truth in the first place. So this is the kind of picture where also you could take a broad bracketing of this, in which some of the pictures where, if you have it on a tripod, hopefully for this, you could take pictures where the sky is, where that background element is perfectly exposed, and other pictures where your foreground element is perfectly composed, and mix the two. And that's often a way to fix it. And there's a lot that this is worth playing with again, a lot, this picture.
Next up is Great Blue Heron, Alan Wiggins.
That's a nice bird. There was a lot of, again, all of the animal pictures here were kind of particularly professionally done, which is kind of odd. That's a nice bird and nicely composed. Maybe a tiny bit tighter, because that little sticky branch in the foreground isn't necessary, and everything else is pretty lovely. So maybe a little tighter on the bird. Maybe there's a reason. Maybe this is cropped already and you didn't want it to get soft. That has happened to all of us, I'm sure. But the bird itself is very well exposed. And again, I would just play around with some composition with this guy. Did the bird actually sit still for a while, or was this one of those magic moments and he just turned his head and went away? Oh, Alan,
I was chasing him around for a while.
It's humiliating,
It didn't
right?
sit still very long.
Either if you could have opened up a little more too, with your aperture to throw the background more out of focus, or if you had gotten, and again, we're chasing an effing bird, but if you lowered your body and his beak was against just the kind of green and brown and not having that little dot under it. I mean, those are the things that get in the way from all of us having especially with things that we can't control, like a bird. It's what keeps all of us from getting great photographs and not just, wow, that's a nice photograph. And often we can't control it. But again, the nature folks will, observing them and speaking to them, I mean, that's why they take thousands of pictures over many encounters. And that's why we get the famous pictures that we see. But a very nice grab, and I'm sure it wasn't easy to get him. I like the fact that he's hiding behind a little bush, like a little decency thing too, like a child who thinks he can't be seen. It's really nice. I like the foreground a lot.
Okay, next up is Long Wait for High Tide, Phil Olivo.
Yeah, this is a very pretty place and a lovely photograph. I love the colors and the textures. For this particular shot, I think it would have been better if it was possible to lay on the ground or dig a hole, and get the masts up above that first hill in the background. And it would change the composition somewhat, but let's go back to painting again. This is the kind of picture that resonates with us so well, not just because of photography, but because of hundreds and hundreds of years of painting. And a painter would never place the point of a spire or the point of a mast and just overlay it and have it meet some other object exactly. They wouldn't do it. You'll never, that's something that's just, they would never do it. So when we step into this realm of painterly photographs, it puts the pressure on us to think of what a painter would do. And again, a painter it's much more, they have to consider their, and they can cheat. Let's not forget that again. So a painter might extend the staff or do something, but it would be much more interesting if some of those elements were brought up. And because right now you're containing the boat to the first, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 layers at least. You have the foreground grass, the mud, the first hill, the water, and the background layer. And right now you're trapping the boat in the first 3 layers instead of saying, instead of actually having it float there. So I would play around with that a little bit. I like the fact that it's all in focus. I was taking pictures in Saratoga Lake this summer on a night when the wind was brutal. And I'm not sure I got any pictures I'd ever show anybody, but I didn't have a tripod. The wind came up during my walk, and I propped myself up against trees, and I was taking pictures at a half second and a quarter second and a full second, and allowing the grass to move. And that's a trick that it was hard, be kind of hard for a painter until they hit the impressionists, right? That's a hard thing for a painter to pull off. So I love shots like this, just as they are, but it's also awesome on this kind of day to use an ND filter or stop down as much as you can, wait till later in the day and let the grass move a little bit. And it creates, with every change from a 15th of a second to a 30th of a second to a half a second, every little change creates such a magical, different method of capturing the grasses. So, again, it's nice to see them perfectly, but almost, with a great camera phone now, people can take great pictures. So for folks like us that take photography more seriously, it puts us in the position of trying to say more all the time, or trying to do it in some way that's more special. And again, that it would be fun to see this done in different ways. But a great, and also compositionally though, I have to compliment it really well. The boat is beautifully placed in the frame for where it is. It's again, I wish I was there with you. Where was it?
This
Where
was
was it
this was taken in Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. Wow.
Yeah, but I have no idea where.
Yeah, no, it's just great. It's a beautiful peaty boggy place. Really great, and boats are beautiful too.
Okay. Next up is Lunchtime, Larry Hill.
Another great animal shot, right? Really tough this time. It made it very difficult. Any one of our animal shots could have been the best of the animal shots, but it's hard because there were so many this time, and I didn't want to have the entire show, the entire color, the category be animal shots. But it's a great shot. It's a great capture, very sharp, a flower. If the background were a little more out of focus, it would probably be a little better, I think, because it's such a great image, and the butterfly is so beautiful, but it is a little, that leaf that mimics the shape of the wing. Again, you couldn't have a BB gun with you to shoot it away or move it, because I'm sure the butterfly wouldn't comply with your composition moment. But it would be nice if the background were, I love the bamboos back there. It's the same, by the way, these are, of course, the same criticisms I would have of the same photograph if I took it. And that I just wish that one plant on the left wasn't there, because the one bud looks like it's holding the wing up, which pisses me off. And the other leaf is not doing what I want it to do. So, but it's still a lovely shot, and the colors are great, and kudos on the crispness. Was this a tripod shot, or is somebody really stable here? It's Larry. Stable. I'm sorry, you're really stable. That's great. Well, how long was the lens? Do you know, Larry? Roughly?
No, I don't.
Was it a zoom?
I think so.
Yeah, it really, anyway. I mean, this is something that, frankly, looking at serious amateur photos for years, I love looking at people's photos. They've just gotten better, period. Across the board, we're able to do, the equipment we have is, in a sense, it's challenging us, because it's frankly, it's more than keeping pace with what we want it to do. It's extremely capable. So it behooves us to learn more about it and to get into the minor details of things that we can do to make it better. Because this is an amazingly crisp picture. If you think about, if you're old like I am, and you think about nature photography, even the best of it that you saw in the 60s, it was terrible. Almost all of it was pretty terrible. and especially the stuff that you see on that came from film. And now the things that are on TV are so eye-popping that even the things from 20 years ago, nature shows from 20 years ago, can't hold a candle to what we're looking. Has anyone seen My Octopus Teacher? I know we're not cinematographers, but watch My Octopus Teacher for some of the most how the hell pictures of underwater animals, just beautiful. And anyway, I won't spoil it. It's a hard movie to forget the name of, My Octopus Teacher. But yeah, it's a lovely picture.
Okay. Honorable mentions. And I made a mistake. There's our 4 honorable mentions, not 2.
Okay.
First up is Snowy Road, Kim Koza.
This picture, it is a lovely, in a sense, typical image from where we live here. So many people, especially with what they can do in their camera phones now, take mirror images, pictures like this. This is so beautiful because it is virtually a mirror image, but it isn't, right? Each set of trees is, and bare trees, they're not great models. They often make for some pretty terrible photographs. So this is a lovely picture of bare trees with, luckily, some ice captured on them. But what makes the picture especially lovely is its palette. You have a little bit of gray-blue in the sky. You have the subtle yellow stripe in the road, which is not garish, and the person didn't use software to amp it up and make it look like those pictures that I'm talking about, the super amped up color that wasn't there. And if you can see it here, luckily I could see it in mine. There's an amazing pink color that's captured through the kind of center zone of the ice in the tree branches. That just, it's a very pretty, and pretty is often an insult, frankly, on some artistic things. But this is a damn pretty picture of some pretty crappy elements that come together really nicely. I have been on these roads, not necessarily in winter for this kind of picture, but walking dangerously back and forth on the yellow line, trying to get just the right foreground things in. I'm not, because I always like to be critical about something, I'm not super crazy about the one clump on the left-hand side that takes, I'd rather that white snow came and brought my eye into the picture and wasn't interrupted by that. And again, that's how I've almost lost my life many times on them in the middle of roads, trying to get that just right. But it's a lovely picture of a very special moment that was captured pretty carefully. Again, I think that bracketing through something like this to see sometimes the right exposure is not the right exposure. Sometimes it's better to underexpose pictures like this outdoors, and with the wonderful software, it's nothing you could have done 40 years ago, but you could bring it home then, and by artificially bringing it up to what you remember, you might have more there than your camera was actually capable of capturing at the exposure that you preferred. So this is again, a great picture, and I can talk about it a lot because it is such a lovely picture.
Next up is Dancing Petals, Nina Kesey.
This picture we talked about boring photographs before, and I like boring photographs, and I like pictures of things that should be like medical illustrations. And this could be a picture of a flower in a book that describes this flower, but unlike I think a painting of this flower that might have been done by someone in the Audubon kind of era of like perfect plants, what's so lovely about this flower is it's so not perfect. It's a cooked out, bizarre, it looks like it went to manic panic for hair color for the little extra petals. It's a really weird little flower, and the branch is out of focus in like just the right way. It's a really cool picture of an incredibly mundane, it's probably a small flower that you would ignore if it was on the ground. Is that true? Elena? I can't see what it's, Ilana? Was it a tiny flower?
Yeah, it was pretty small. It was an astra, but it didn't grow very big, and it dried out that way. It's dried flower.
Yeah. Yeah, there's something very human about it because it's imperfect and it's frail and it's a little bit ugly, you know? I'm sure against all the fresh astras that were, you know, it's just not the sexiest, but that's what makes it a lovely picture. It really is sweet. And again, it has a lovely a frailty that makes it easier to be important to us instead of just being, again, a medical picture of a beautiful flower, which you could have done, right? You could have taken a perfect picture, and a perfect flower would not have made as compelling a picture. I might have trimmed off the one little hook thing on the bottom, but again, maybe it wouldn't work without that. So I really like it. It would have been fun to see it in even more reduced depth of field, you know, playing around with a little bit. Some things even more. There's a thing about depth of field, if you want to capture people's emotions, of course, in that because your eyes almost tear up when they have to look at the things that are out of focus, you're gaining some psychological advantage over the viewer by making them get teary already looking at your work, trying to make it focus. So it might be fun, even as an experiment with this, to bring it into like a Photoshop and see what happens if you take certain elements of it and throw them more out of focus. But it's just a lovely picture, and again, it's a boring picture of a boring little deformed flower that just it's an overachiever. You know, it does so much better than all of those things that you were given. And the white background's a perfect choice. Anything else would have not, I think, would have been super distracting. So thank you for bringing us into a special place to see this flower.
Yeah,
Thank you.
next honorable mention is Icelandic Waterfall, Jenna Kaywood.
I'm going to go backwards here. My first criticism is, for me, this tilts down a degree or so to the right, and that makes it look like the water's running out of the picture. That's how my eye sees it. This may be perfectly level, but I would prefer it, and it could be because of what we talked about before, is that this wide lens is distorting the surface of the water, right? It's curving on both sides. It would be fun to see if you could correct a little of that in post. I don't think it adds, that's not necessarily something you want to always get rid of, but I think in this case, it takes me out of this very special place, and it makes my eye, like the water, go out of the picture. So that's the criticism. The positive stuff is in like just huge handfuls of positive stuff. The subtle color variation in the sky that the photographer didn't feel necessary to go in and give us a cartoon version of it in post. I really appreciate that. And then we see it reflected in the water. So the water is subtle itself, and also has these pinky, bluey things that are captured in the green water. It really is it's a wonderful adventure for the eye. The little splash, the waterfall, a really cool place to bring your viewer to. It's really lovely, and you get just the right amount of UV in the background. If it was all gone, it wouldn't be as good, right? If that mountain was perfectly described, it would look a little too postcardy maybe. So this becomes, it's a landscape that has certain frailties to it that are allowed to remain in the picture that make it a more personal picture. It's really lovely. And again, I would just play with trying to get the horizon a little straighter so I want to stay in your world exactly. I don't want to be distracted out of it. So anyway, I'm glad you brought us to this place. Where is this beautiful place? Oh, Iceland. Wow. Did you spend a lot of time there? Who is it?
Sorry, I was trying to get my mouse to scroll over to the other screen. We were there for it was a 10-day photography tour.
Wow.
So
yeah, it is
exhausting.
Stunning. Exhausting. It is. Yeah. It's stunning. I'd love to see more from that trip. That is it's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Okay, our next honorable mention is Butterfly Wing Abstract, Sean Sullivan.
Wow. Really cool. I liked it right away. I didn't care what it was. It's amazing what it is. I went in close, and there seems to be some digital Is Sean on the phone?
That's me.
Oh, Sean, I'm sorry. Sean, that's Sean Sullivan.
Yes,
Now, did you do some like pulling and stretching to?
I ran it through Topaz's studio to give it a little bit of, because it was sort of flat and needed to push it up, so I gave it a little bit of a filter.
If you go down in downtown Albany near the oldest, across the parking lot from the oldest building in Albany, which is near the Times Union Center, by the parking, there are a couple steel doors, and there I have 2 of my digital compositions are there, photographs that I've taken as doors to like another world, and I love completely manipulated pictures, so that's why I had to include this. I love it. I would also, I love this the way it is. I would like to see it vertical too, the other way with the purple on top. But I like it. I would manipulate more. You know, sometimes if this is like not a single pass, but it looks like it's the version of one kind of manipulation. If you take it further, oh, look at that. Is that cool or what? It takes on an almost like a monster form, like a big spider coming to get you. Anyway, I'd like to see more manipulated stuff. I think it's great. And again, I've been lost in it. I have a series of pictures they all started as actual objects, but they are only paintings now. They're just paintings with light. And that's another way we can really challenge ourselves, because Photoshop will do anything for you and effects filters, but it's nice to kind of grab them by the reins and again use modern painting in this case as a kind of format and just take your imagination and to just crazy places with them and create compositions that couldn't exist and textures that couldn't exist in the real world. So again, I love this kind of thing, and thank you for doing it and sharing it with us. I love over manipulated pictures.
Okay, and our winners in 5th place, Resting Frog, Nancy Futner.
You know, again, the nature pictures really knocked it out of the park, you know, this time. Because, again, like this picture, this isn't just a really great picture of a frog. It's also well composed, and it has an intriguing background and foreground that are working really well together. And unless you killed the frog or froze it or nailed it to the ground, I'm sure this wasn't very easy to get just right. And it's lovely. And our equipment's helping here, right? Our new modern equipment, it's very sharp. And that really helps here. The shallow depth of field really helps, because even that second eyeball ridge, if that was sharp, it wouldn't make you look at his incredibly peculiar foreground eye as much. It's just, there's a lot of great stuff going on here. And I'm sure most of it was on purpose. And like with all nature photography, probably some of it was just luck too. But it's really cool. And he's cropped in an interesting way. He's cropped like an alligator. He's not cropped like a frog. So that makes it interesting too. So you're really taking us to a beautiful place with a beautiful animal and with beautiful colors and just the right exposure and just the right depth of field for my taste. So it just has, I know there's a lot of luck involved. You probably, who is it?
Nancy Futner.
Nancy, just really great work. Is Nancy here?
Yeah, I am.
Hey, Nancy.
Hi.
You must be very proud of it, right?
Well, yes, I'm pleased with him. There was some luck in that he was just this, I guess he's probably a toad, not a frog, but he was just sitting in a leaf of plant on my back deck. And he
wow.
sat for quite a
Wow.
while. And then when I looked again, he was gone. I don't know. Anyway, I was lucky.
Yeah, it's really lovely. Thank you for sharing it. And it's nicely composed too, I think. I might have a tiny bit more. I'm not sure I would change anything, actually. I just think it's really great.
Thanks.
Okay. 4th place, Lake Solitude, Linda Tomasulo.
We talked about painting, and this is very much the way a painter might do this, right? Because it's certainly not awfully real. There's not a lot of detail, and the boat, because of the way the light was and the way it's hitting the lens, the boatman is not particularly well defined against the background. You know, it's almost as if the painter put it in, thought it was too garish, and then went over it with a feather brush to kind of blend him back. So this is a painting, and really a great gift to the eye because it is a painting. It really is lovely. And can we speak to Linda?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, Linda, really special. Now, you won't harsh my high. Is how much of what we're seeing here is what you saw that day, or did you do things in post to what are we looking at?
Pretty much what I saw, except
Wow.
it's cropped. And actually,
Yeah.
I entered this earlier and I made a mistake because I entered the uncropped image.
Oh,
But
wow.
it's mostly the top that's cropped a little bit.
Yeah.
And I did try to enhance the guy in the kayak a little bit.
Yeah.
But
Well,
it's-
you didn't
it's, you know,
overdo
early
it.
morning fog, on the
Yeah.
lake.
It's just, I call it like punching sometimes. It's fun sometimes to go in. I've taken pictures like this, but I don't have that little tornado of pink like you have in the foreground as much as I like. So I'll go in with a poof brush of lightning, of highlights, and I'll just punch it in a few spots. And sometimes it doesn't, honestly, it just doesn't work at all. But occasionally it helps to bring because I know I see this a lot with my iPhone. I can take a picture of fog with my iPhone, and the iPhone corrects most of the fog. It's the most annoying thing. Digital cameras. I mean, it's why makeup's so important when you're doing digital portraiture. That matters, right? Because the camera is not even seeing even what film told us before. It's really trying to find things, and it's making its own decisions. There's a lot of software. There's a lot of stuff going on. And anyway, this is a beautiful shot, and everything you did was right. You probably cropped out something distracting on the top, and thank you for that, because we don't need it. And this is it's perfect. It's really lovely, and nothing ever looks straight to me. I probably have something wrong with my inner ear, but it looks a little. But that's, again, it's not a real scene, right? This could be a complete. Someone could do this in Illustrator. Right? By just compiling a few images together or drawing the guy in the boat. There's almost very little about this that is purely or in any way necessarily photographic. And that's pretty rare. So thank you. Really great shot.
Thank you.
Next up is Fall Colors on the Ausable River. Alan Wiggins, third place.
This is. I'll go backwards again, and if there's a criticism of this picture, it's just like this is a picture that Kodak would have put in the mega theater, mega prints they used to make. I forget what they called that project where they made the giant photographs and you could go see them in certain buildings. And it's just too perfect, But really, that's what's good about it too. It really is perfect in lots of ways. The UV, the blueness of the UV in the background, I go back and forth on that. I would play around with that, but it really is just it's a great spot. It's really nicely composed because it takes the eye, it has this foreground interest of the falls, and then it esses its way through the picture. And I think probably again that maybe to the right, that where the falls go, it does a lot of things right, and it's might crop it since the trees are so puffy and so perfectly filling in everything. I'm not sure what that little space to the right of the pink tree does for me. So I think if you crop that, you have an even more perfect picture. And again, perfect's not always good, but this is a case where you can't really deny that it's well taken. Again, the medium, I can't tell for sure. But it's another one of these HDR things where if we could have captured the white snow, the white water foam in the foreground a little better, that would be awesome. maybe not even possible with your camera, and maybe we're not even seeing it as good as it is here. It's probably true, because one of the things we lose when we copy these pictures and retransmit them is a bandwidth, right? So you may be losing a little white. But again, it's a lovely picture. Let's go back to my comment about food before. Those rocks look great because they're basically being lit from the back. The big lightness of the sky is creating a little bit of shine on those rocks. And it just makes them look so, they're like perfect rocks, and the water coming through. It's a really sweet picture.
Okay, second place, Aging Beauty, Claudia Jakubowski.
This is again, we have a painterly picture here, right? This is a photographer who took this painting with a camera, but there's a straight shot of these flowers would be a nice picture, frankly, be perfectly nice. But that's not what we have here. We have distortion from, is our photographer with us?
Yes.
Hey, Claudia.
Hi.
So you made, I mean, obviously this is all about decisions, right? You didn't just, you didn't take pictures of perfect flowers. You didn't take them in the right direction. You didn't take them in a beautiful vase. You didn't take them in a beautiful place. There's something obviously melancholy about it. So the fact that you can turn a bunch of yesterday's flowers into something moving is, it's great. And can you tell us something about creating it?
A friend of mine had given me some tulips, and I just liked the way that they had dried. And I had this old crock, and I stuck it on some black fabric. And then I just worked with the crop, and I added a texture onto it and some other different things. And I just like the way it turned out.
Yeah, and how did you attain or adjust to getting the almost shaky cam kind of like branch on the top left? What is that
It was
from?
some type of effect that I applied. I honestly,
Yeah.
I took this a while
Okay.
ago, so I don't remember exactly, but
Yeah.
it was some type of effect that kind of blurred it slightly.
I really
And then
like
I
it.
added the texture to kind of give it a little bit more definition.
Yeah, when you have a picture like this, and frankly, it's looking too pretty, which this picture doesn't suffer from at all, right? There's melancholy, it's sad, it's imperfect. If it's too pretty, and that branch would be distracting, and you're very wise to do that because it would really be distracting if it was perfectly defined. If you're in a layering program like Photoshop, you could take one layer and make it way crazy out of focus, even putting motion blur on it, and then covering it with a perfect picture on top, and then using just like a charcoal artist would do, or a pastel artist. You could take your eraser and gently erase little bits away of the perfectly perfect picture
Okay.
and expose little bits of the motion underneath.
Okay.
It's a very sexy technique. You can even change the color scale of that background picture a little, right? Like, let's say in this case, you could pitch. I've done these pictures with like 5 layers, and on one of the layers, I'll even pitch that green branch into the pink tones of the flower and erase a little bit of what's over it ever so slightly to bring out pink tones in the branch that obviously were never there. You know, this is, again, these are classrooms that, we get into, and you just did a great job of, and you're not even telling us, which is unusual, you're not really even telling us where to look particularly, not exactly. Obviously it could be that somewhat more perfect blossom set on the top, but you're still not forcing us to look. So there's a modern art positivity about this piece, in that you're not bowling us over with a message. You're saying, hey, I did this work. Find your own way through it. You pick what you want to look at. It's really lovely.
Thank you.
Lots of fun.
Okay, first place, Great Blue Heron, Costa Rica, Ray Henriksen.
I if you told me last week I was going to pick a nature photograph for first prize, I'd tell you that it's not going to happen. But it's just, I was an Museum of Natural History addict as a child in Manhattan. And if this is not a heron in a glass box, having just been set up by the best dressers of animals, it really is amazing. The lighting is so beautiful on the heron. The background's distracting, but it's kind of his environment, and he stands out fine. His tail gets a little lost back there in that rock. I would be tempted to draw a line on that tail and extend the plants down and fake it a little bit. But that's me on a weekday when I'm not strong enough to fight the urge. But it's a lovely shot. I love the monotone quality of the whole thing. It doesn't try to wow us with a crazy yellow beak. And no, it's all in this pretty, if you think about it, it's this really tight range of tones, right? And we have greenish blacks and none of them are bright greens. We have greenish blacks and grayish greens and greenish gray water. It's a really special picture. And again, I loved it, and I probably bumped it up to 1 because I generally wouldn't pick a nature photograph as a first prize, but I think it rose to that level for me.
Yeah,
Can you tell us something about being there?
Right?
There I am.
Hey, Ray.
Tell me your question.
Can you tell us something about where this was and why you didn't drown or something like that?
Well, I was in a boat. I was on a tour in Costa Rica, through the jungles of Costa Rica, and there was a lot of wildlife, a lot of birds, and that bird was just standing there posing for me. Didn't move. I could take as many pictures as I wanted to.
It's great,
and it was very happy, and I was very happy.
It's really, really. I've been in the jungles in Costa Rica, and it is freaking dark.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the advantage of photographing a white bird.
Yeah, absolutely. I took pictures in the film era in Costa Rica, and I was in the jungle a whole day, and I'll tell you, I didn't get very many pictures that I was proud of. It was crazy dark, and I wasn't prepared. I wasn't prepared. I was dressed properly, which I got compliments from our tour guide. There were people who wore flip-flops. It was a jungle. That was not a smart thing to do. There are trees that if you lean on them, you get covered with insects in like 10 seconds. So but it's, again, I was not prepared for how dark it could be in the open daylight in Costa Rica at like noon. And it's basically, it's dusk in the undergrowth. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful shot. Thank you so much
for
a nature shot that's really special.
Congratulations to our winners, and we'll move on to our Monochrome category. Rich, we're going to have to speed up the commentaries a little bit.
Okay, yes. Sorry about that.
We're really getting down on time here.
Yeah, I'm going to zoom.
Monochrome, we have 28 entries. And this is where we have 5 places and 2 honorable mentions.
Okay, I'll try to, we've been through a lot of basics, so I'll rapid fire. Okay.
First up is Bell Santa Fe Ray Henriksen.
What's unusual about this shot, and I like, is that it's a nice composition, but I like the fact that we can actually see some detail within that bell. That was really well done, and I'll kind of leave it at that. I love This is a architectural shot. It's not a whole thing. So you've really recomposed it into a piece of graphic art, which is pretty cool. So it's a cool shot that does something special because of the way that it's cropped and also the skill. And it's the tones are very lovely.
Next up is South Pearl Street View, Marguerite Hill.
Yeah, we see a lot of pictures of this scene, and this is a very nice one. There's a little bit of like some kind of distortion going on, hard to control, but I think in this case you could correct it a little bit, because when it's architecture, it's right or it's wrong, right? It's either the perfect, which your eye didn't see, of course, but it's perfect because we expect it to be perfect, or it's off. And this is just slightly off. But I do like it. I love that neighborhood. And I think that very fast, just remember the word Brasilia. We have the egg in these buildings. The architect built the same city in the jungle in Brazil with very little variation. And it's a lot of fun to poke your friends because they won't believe it. But there is a city in the jungle that looks just like Albany.
Okay, next up is Dancing Shoes, Linda Tomasula.
I'm a theater person, obviously, so I love things that look like theater elements thrown about. I like these antique looking shoes with that antique looking background. I'm struggling. I like the painterly look of it, yet I'm still looking for something that's 100% black in it for some reason, and I'm not getting that. So maybe it's not frosty enough to be not that way. So I feel like it's close enough to being supposedly showing an accurate range of tones, but I don't see the black. So for me, I just felt like it could be seen a little differently. But I like the shot, and of course you wonder, where's the girl? What happened? Why are those shoes there? So it does tell a cool story, or implies a cool story.
Okay, next up is Up the Leaning Tower of Pisa, Nancy Futner.
So this is obviously, it's great. I don't know if I'm looking up, of course, which I think we are, but you could be looking down. So that's a lot of fun. I can't see this picture in person, but controlling the tones in a shot like this is everything. So this is a place where I might get in there and do some of that punching and make some of those glows inside a little brighter so I know what they are. But it's a cool shot with a really nice composition, actually, making an eye. And I don't care if I'm looking up, down, sideways, or down, or, I don't care about any of that. I like what I'm seeing. I would like to see it played with a little more maybe, but it's a cool shot.
Okay, next up is Evergreen Muse, Claudia Jakubowski. Losing my voice.
A nice picture of a statue in a park that I don't know if I'm supposed to look at the tree or the statue though. So I would like it cropped a little more. The tree, I mean. I don't think you want to crop the angel. So it's a pretty good shot with the tones controlled pretty well. Again, I don't like sticky trees, but this is a pretty good shot of sticky trees. But again, I think it behooves the photographer here to be a little more forceful and to crop it down from the upper left a little bit and to make our eye drift over. I like the fact that the angel is not in the center for sure, but I still think our eye drifts around a little too much in here. So it's a picture that could be improved a lot with just the crop.
Okay, next up is Oil and Water Universe, Joe Catronio.
This is again, I like manipulated pictures. I don't care what it is. Again, to me, it looks very scientific, and it could be some oil in the bottom of a pan in the kitchen, and it's a fun picture. And again, like I said before, I would like to see this further experimented with because it's still, in other words, your mind can unwrap this. I can tell you what I think. I might be wrong, but I could tell you, I think, how it was created. If you take it a few more steps and really mess it up, that's when I think this kind of playing around. But right now, it's cool all by itself. It really could be a book cover for some weird book on physics because it does make you think about either macro or micro objects. So it's a cool shot. But I like the fact that some folks are playing around, and I think you should play around more.
Okay, next up is Cloudy Day, Alina Kesey.
That's just so, there's a lot that's right about this. And if the category hadn't had pictures that were very similar, that were a little more engaging, it would have moved up the list a little better. So it really is just where you were, what had happened. Really good control of the whites. Nothing really gets blown out all that much. And the water's lovely. And although this is probably not a time exposure, it's the kind of look you can get with a time exposure with water often. It's really lovely place. And I love the little extra black up in the sky that came from this kind of infrared look that you've, again, I don't care if this looks real. It's just it's very cool place.
Okay, next up is Fantastic Fungi, Gina Leclerc.
I love boring pictures. I love pictures of just a thing sitting there. This is particularly nicely lit as well. Not super crazy about I want to see a little more background around it. It's cropped tight. If you want to crop it tighter and show us just part of it, that's one thing. Then the curls start to mean more, right? Because they're playing against the frame in some way. So they're pushing and curling up and they're exploding like it's an explosion. But right now it's neither here nor there. So for me, I'd like to see a little more background. But kudos on tones and a great subject matter and a model that doesn't run away or need lunch, which is great.
Next up is Feathers, Kim Koza.
This is a nice composition of some very interesting feathers. I like the background. This is like the shoes tonally. It just didn't grab me, the tones of the picture. I want to see either maybe it wouldn't look good frostier or without contrast, but it needed to be a little bit more contrasty for me. And it's probably very little, but a little bit. But it is an interesting composition. I would never think to shoot just that part of feathers in that way, cropped that way. That's a good thing. So photography, I'll probably say it every year, and I tried not to say it till now, but photography is very, very much an automatic art, right? You can leave a camera in the room with an intervalometer, and it takes pictures all day long, and some of them will probably be good, right? Now, you can't do the same thing with a paintbrush. I've tried. You leave it on a table, you get nothing. So, it isn't what we see that's important often. It's what we don't want to show or we throw away. It's editing that makes us great. And this picture was edited in a way that makes it very interesting. And again, I would never do it this way. And that's what attracted me to it. But technically, there's just something about it that I would love to see some variations on.
Next up is Bridging the Gap, Jenna Kaywood.
I love all the tones in this picture. Compositionally, I'm not crazy about it. But then again, it's a winter picture. If you show more sky, there are sticky trees. We know how I love sticky trees. I don't. But still, it's cropped a little tightly on top for it to be satisfying. So, but I'm glad you took the picture and I'm glad you showed it because I love the, here the photograph is distorting, like it always does, how we perceive the drips of the calcite, like on the rocks. And it's magical in that way. So I love the detail. And I'm glad you took it. I'm glad you showed it to us. I'm not sure that recropping this on site there would have given us a much better picture. So it's a tough one. Just may not, for me, maybe a picture of this that day with those trees couldn't be perfect. But it is lovely. The twisting road, it's a lovely shot. And I again, it has an amazing range of tones in it.
Okay, next up is Thistles, Carol Bell.
Here we go. I was torn back and forth. I love this kind of shot. You really, you were extraordinarily playful with focus, and that is great. It's a great tool. I abuse it all the time. I love to tell people exactly where to look, especially with a distracting set of elements like this. This almost looks like pictures of mold or pictures of just stains or rust on fabric. It could be a lot of things. We know what it is. Compositionally, it really isn't a composition picture. Let's call it that. It's more of a repeat, like in a textile design. And so I would have moved it maybe move around a little more and give us a slightly less distracting background on the left. I'm not sure, but I like the picture. And again, it's a picture of nothing, right? This is like the Seinfeld world of photography. Pictures of nothing. Pictures of like just weeds in the backyard. And boy, you made that so much more interesting than the simple description dried weeds in the backyard could possibly be. And again, it brings us to a magical place with a lot of with a very odd subject. Very nice.
Okay, next up is Just a Tree in the Snow, Linda Tomasulo.
These are great moments, right? When we can actually find something without any distractions around it. Unfortunately, then I think there's no sense trying to hold any more detail in the whites. I think it's great where it is. I might even do a version where there's no texture, like where that little horizon line is, just where the tree in the halfway up the tree. I might make it slightly more contrasty so that doesn't exist at all, because I'm not sure it's actually doing anything for us. You know, it really is a piece of just art. And I might, if it was mine, I would do that and probably make it just black on white without much in the way of grays in that area at least. And I would probably go in, and that one branch that's pointing down on the left, I'd probably decide to truncate it. I would retouch it white and get rid of some of it, because it's taking some of the fantastic energy of, it's almost like a hand, right? An angry hand like this. And then that one little branch is like saying, no, look over here. So I would probably shorten that a little bit. But it's really great. You were obviously confined to the actual tree that you found and couldn't do a lot of topiary work. But it really is it's a cool shot. And again, you were very lucky to find it on such a clean background. It's really nice.
Next up is Lonely, Dennis Johnston.
A lovely mood captured. Again, we're now heading into this, like, is it a painting or is this a charcoal drawing? So it is it's very little of just photography. And it could be a terrific illustration, again, for a book cover. You could just float some type in there, and it's a film noir background without the character, of course. But it's a really lovely illustration. And there's not a lot to say about it because it really is just magic-y. And it could be composed in different ways. But again, as a graphic artist, this is the kind of shot that I would say, oh, I'm pulling that out for this book design. I want to see what that looks like on the cover. So it's lovely and weird and moody. And thank you.
Okay, next up is Still Life, Carol Bell.
Here's another one. This still life is far more successful than the one in color. And that's a lot to say, right? So maybe what I want to think right away is that the color one, if you used your post-production to drain some of the color out of the elements, to get control over them. Because what does a painter do, right? They have a palette, meaning they have a certain set of colors. They don't put any color in the world next to each other just because it's there. Not that that would be wrong, but that's not what they do generally, right? In classic painting, they give you a range. So reducing this to a black and white takes that range out of it. So this is, again, a far better picture than the other one. I wouldn't ever crop a shade or something like that where it's touching the top of the frame on the top and the left on the left. I wouldn't do that. I would open up a little bit in this case. This isn't the case to crop things because, again, you're taking a classic picture. I love the wrinkling fabric. Oh, it's beautiful. There is some stuff on the board, and it's right where the lamp is. And that's really the weakness here in this composition, because that stuff on the board is right where the lamp is. So you have to look straight down the lamp, right into the fruit. Would have been far better if you moved it halfway across the board. It would have improved this picture tremendously. And again, this is your work. It doesn't have to be real. You could throw a little bit of that board out of focus in the foreground. Everything in this picture doesn't have to be the same level of real as everything else. But this is a universe better than the other color picture. So again, in that our photography is our classroom thing, this is up like 2 grades from that. This is really on its way.
Okay, next up is Black and White Breakfast, Lita Kesey.
This is an odd picture. It's funny. And I'm not quite sure why 3 sugar cubes, and egg, toast, and coffee is funny, but it's a funny picture. And there's a weird economy to that of saying, I mean, you have very few tones in a way, and I don't know, it's a funny picture and shouldn't be, and that's a credit to it. That's a real credit. It's odd in a way that early photographs by some, I can't remember anybody, like a Man Ray, right, type pictures. It's just odd. It's experimental in a way, even though it's, again, a bland picture of boring everyday stuff. So I would just do more like this. Again, pictures like this, maybe one of them is just okay, but in a series of objects, if you could really keep feeling this way, could make a very interesting series. So I would keep going because, again, because you've reduced it down to black and white with a little bit of gray, it's graphic art, right? It's no longer... in other words, you could do much better with the camera. You could bring out more, but you didn't. You made it a black and white, weird, toned world, and I would like to see more of them. It's an odd, funny picture.
Okay, next up is Browser and Stalker, Rich Schreibstein.
Great name. This looks a little bit, we were talking about printing. One of my early printing in the darkroom, a lot of them, it's lacking in a complete tonality, right? It's a nice composition, our eyes being brought down this table, but the guy is not separated enough from the background for him to mean much to me. I like the woman there too. Again, maybe if you move to the right a little bit and you got the guy against the whiter sky, then that would be better. So there's a little compositional thing, but what's hurting it again, though, is that I don't think there's any reason for this picture not to have a true black in it, and it doesn't have a true black in it, right? And I think that would help make it it would make the composition feel stronger.
Okay, next up is Daddy's Little Girl, Alan Wiggins.
That's, we were talking about portraits before, and it's nice to see that we've only had a few portraits, but that's a nice portrait and nicely taken. It's just pretty great. And I'm not going to say much more about it. It's well exposed. The kid's hair is just terrific with the light coming through it. The tech is good, and I would play around with the cropping, but I always play around with the cropping. I don't know if I'm ever happy. I get semi-happy, so I would play around with it. But it's a good portrait. I would take a lot of. It's probably a family member. I don't know. But I would continue down this route and take lots more pictures of people because people light up when they look at you, and that's important. So I would do way more portraits. It's a powerful form, and not everybody can do it.
Okay, next up is Pillars of Justice, Sean Sullivan.
Yeah, this is again, a boring picture, and that's cool. It's just a picture of that building. To its credit, it is damn nearly really straight, and that is pretty terrific.
That took a lot of work.
Yeah, right? Doesn't it? I'm a little bugged by the fact, because everything is so perfect and so straight, and so I'm a little bugged by the fact that the tip of the angle coming down on the right, that tip is cut off a little bit, and the other one isn't. I would say I would just cut the tip of the other one off a little bit, and I think the picture would look better right away. Because again, this picture's so anal retentively perfect, and you've captured the tones perfectly, and we could feel every grain of sand in that rock, even though it's so far away, that a tiny thing the implication that it's slightly more to the right than the left is actually annoying. It shouldn't be, but it is because you made it so perfect. So I would crop it so it's actually perfect.
It was very difficult to get.
Really difficult. It's a really cool shot.
There were a lot of people on the steps.
Oh, really? That's not helpful. At least they weren't rioters.
And I hope not. Next up is Hot Pipes, Alan Wiggins.
Yeah, I have motorcycle shows are terrific places to photograph beautiful handmade objects, and this is a great shot. The thing that takes me out of this shot, the only thing, is that thing on the right, that building there. It's just getting in the way. So if you used depth of field to get rid of it, that's fine. Or if you just looked more at the bike, sometimes we don't have to work very hard to get amazing pictures of bikes because the people make these amazing pieces of art. They clean them like I would never clean anything in my life, and I like clean things. And the sky is big, and they are just playgrounds for texture. And this, again, there's a literal thing of, hey, this is a motorcycle. Cropped a little more, seen a little differently, it really becomes just a mad tangle of shapes and tones. And that, in this case, I think that would kind of be better because this is your photograph. Unless you're commercially taking a picture of this person's motorcycle, which is one thing, but that's not what this is about, right? This is you saying, look at the special way I saw this. And I think it'd be more special if you saw less of it, is what I'm trying to say. But it's great, and you control the tones really well, and there's actual black, which is nice.
Next up is You're Out of Luck If You Need Gas, Phil Levo.
That's a kooky little spot in the world, and I like it. It's kind of a nerdy thing. It probably can't be leveled correctly. I'm sure those gas pumps are crooked. The building also looks a little off too. So I think either the buildings or the gas pump need to be perfectly straight to really get to be in this world. But it's a cool little shot. It's really like a snapshot, which is not an insult either. It's snapshots can be really cool, and that's a whole genre of the art form. And it really is just a nice snapshot of this building. But I'd be a little more technical and make the doorway exactly perfectly straight so that we can actually appreciate the weirdness of these gasoline stands that are probably sinking into the ground. It would make them sink even further. So, yeah, but it's a weird little spot, and I'm glad that we're there with you.
Okay, next is honorable mentions. And I was wrong. We have 3. I don't know why I'm so off tonight.
That's okay.
First up,
you're a terrific host.
Thank you. Reflecting the Past, Nancy Funtner.
I mean, here's our picture, like Sean's picture, of something really kind of perfect and all the tones being controlled, but with the added attraction of a frankly surreal set of reflections in the glass. So it's a wonderful juxtaposition of the architecturally perfect and sound and this craziness, psychedelic, really, action going on in the glass. So just a cool place to bring us all, and a nice shot. Really nice.
Next honorable mention, Study in White, Claudia Jakubowski.
Again, doing things imperfectly is often just the right thing to do. And there's quite a lot that's imperfect here, and none of that bothers me. There's not a completely black maybe, and that's okay. This is a study in tones, and it's just a lovely place to hang out. I would love to see it, the original file, full res, because I think it'd be even better than what we're looking at here. But it has a transparent quality implied by the white flower on the white background that is not true. That petal is not see-through to that degree, but it really it doesn't matter because it's a magical little moment, and it's peculiar in a lot of ways, and especially the forlorn little pistils like pointing down. They're not pretty at all. The flower is very pretty. They're not really pretty what they're doing. They're like little fingers with claws, and that's what makes it great. It really is. It's lovely.
Okay, our last honorable mention is Moon Over Manhattan, Sean Sullivan.
Man, is this picture crispy, huh? It's like the crispiest picture. I dig the fact that it's over sharpened. I hope you even retouched the moon in there because it's way too perfect and ridiculous. It looks like it's gonna.
That was definitely added.
Yeah, it looks like it's gonna fly by. Like, here comes the moon. I've done it many times, Sean, and it's really well done here. And I love the crispiness of it and the crazy detail of it, and the over sharpening. The over sharpening. It's a real clowny move. I've done it. And here it's done to good effect because this picture, obviously if it was foggy or cloudy, that would be nice too. But if it's going to be sharp, you went straight for the jugular vein, and it makes it fascinating. The impression I couldn't stop when I looked at this picture was the impression that if I hit it with something, that all the buildings would shatter like immediately and fall to the ground. Like you just take small tap with a small hammer and all of these buildings would shatter into piles of glass. So it's a weird way to look at something. And you took, again, it's a really typical snapshot picture out of a window of a skyscraper, but you definitely elevated it by doing strange techniques to it. And that's what makes it great.
Taken from my hotel room.
Really nice.
I could watch all the people in their apartments.
Yes.
And our winners in fifth place, exchange student Thomas Whitmore.
You know, there were not many portraits. There's something oddly timeless about this picture. It doesn't seem like a picture from, it seems like a picture from the 70s, which is a weird thing to say for a lot of reasons.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, you're right. And that's a cool thing about it. And you could take this picture today, but it would still say 1970s. And it's not just the hair. You know, you've done this homage to architectural elements being in pictures and respecting them and letting them command the frame. And it's really it's refreshing to see. I guess it takes us out of our modern digital world. And I appreciated that. I'd like the white in the shirt to maybe be a little more controlled. But again, it kind of looks like the kind of printing we had back then as well, Thomas. So it was a really interesting trip you took us on, and I dig it.
Fourth place, Lisa's Hosier. Who's
There isn't a reason probably for this picture to be as pleasing as it is, but it just is, right? Well-chosen subject, a picture that the color version of it wouldn't be as interesting at all. Be nice, probably, but it's just, it's very well controlled. Our objects are not leaving the frame. That little knob on the right is almost touching the frame. That bugs me a little bit, but that's about it. Everything else about it is lovely. And if I go back to my time at Parsons, this would be the torture assignment by the incredibly cruel illustration teacher, where they give you a pencil and a razor blade and a piece of sandpaper and a big piece of white paper to draw this. White on white on white on white with a little bit of black. And so it's about control, and you've really controlled the tones and the compositional elements in a lovely way. And it even has, it's great in lots of ways. And again, what is it? You didn't go to some special place, really. It is really just a beautifully boring picture that just you elevate by your technique and your eye. Really great shot.
Okay, next up is Egg Path, Rich Schreibstein.
Boy, how many pictures have we seen of the egg, right? How many thousands of pictures I've seen and taken. And here, what you've done with snow and a doorway and Dr. Caligari kind of framing to it is if you haven't seen that movie, you must see it. It's a silent movie. It's been around a long time. You've taken a super mundane, over-photographed thing and made it in creepy and theatrical, and you've made it a story. Even that shadow on the right, what is that? Why is it there? There's just an awful lot going on, and the composition is great. And again, the twisted doorway is just genius. If this picture were perfectly straight, it wouldn't be as good. I don't know why that's true here and not in other places. It just works perfectly. Having it tipped up like that makes us look and wonder what's wrong. It's a film noir kind of picture. It could have been taken in the early days of photography. It has that experimental feel to it, which I really dig. Again, like a Man Ray and our early pioneers of photography. And again, like a lot of our great pictures tonight, it ain't much. It's just a snowy day at a doorway. You didn't have to fly to some other country or stand on your head. It's just cool because you decided to see it in a cool and weird way. And anyway, thank you. It's a great shot.
Okay, in second place, Summer Storm, Joe Catronio.
First, second, and third here, especially in this category, I don't want to blow anybody's. They were really, it was impossible really to assign them. This picture's got kind of everything going for it for me. It's weird. The grass in the foreground ain't right. It's like from another planet. Obviously the tones are off, but in a good way. The composition is very, very good. Not only are the trees cropped right and left in a nice way, but the way the water S's, or the part of the water S's our eye all the way to that weird storm front and the different lighting beyond. You know, it's a hard picture not to keep looking at. There's a lot going on in there. It's, you know, you could have a big print of this in your house and look at it and see different things all the time. And also it implies some dark creepiness that usually you don't get that from your average landscape. And you don't get it just by tipping everything to like the infrared look. It's special in lots of ways. Thank you. Great shot.
Okay, in first place, Icelandic Village Beneath the Rays.
So again, what's this picture? I'll go backwards again. I would like to see it with, even though it's first place, I'd like to see it with more black in the blacks, but there is a beautiful tonality to this that even I'm seeing it here. When I had the picture up front on my computer first, it looked better still as far as the tones. And what's so lovely is it's this weird Carpathian landscape. The light is streaking through the cracks in the top of it. I don't know if that's a building or a crag or a vampire castle. I don't know, but I like it. And then get ready for your mind to be blown, but there's a little town there tucked into the picture. There are some significant amount of houses. There's, 3 or 4 little structures there, and the scale's completely weird. Now I don't know what the hell I'm looking at or what kind of lens. So again, it kept me wondering, and it kept me off my kind of balance. And I like that. I like being surprised by it. Again, playing around a little bit with the printing. This is the kind of thing that I haven't yet purchased. What is it called? Is it called Silver something?
Silver Effects Pro?
Yeah, Silver. This is the kind of print that you want to take into Silver Effects and see what the hell that you can't get by simply doing your mids. And you need to split this up into 10 zones maybe in something like Silver Effects and really see what you might get out of it. So it's a difficult picture, I think, to level properly. Very difficult. And I'd love to see it reprocessed in some different ways, which is a lot of criticisms to have for a first place winner, but it's just true. But it is a wonderful picture, and it's much more special than it appears at first. There are things going on here that a painter would like to do as well. So it makes that wonderful. It jumps that gap again, and it gives us a painting out of a photograph. It's just, and again, why is this first and the other one second? I can't tell you tonight, and I would probably flip them. So first, second, and third were equally first prize level for me.
Well, congratulations to our winners, and excellent work, everybody. And thank you very much, Rich.
It was really my pleasure, and I'm sorry I went on for so long, but I was really inspired by your work. So thank you for doing what you do every year and for staying together for 35 years and encouraging people to challenge themselves and do way more with their cameras than they do getting out of the box. And honestly, I think it gets more difficult as our cameras get better because they take such nice pictures all by themselves. And you continue to prove that the photographer is the important part, and what you do and your imaginations and the decisions that you make are what makes them great. So thanks for the great photographs.
Thank you, Rich. Good job.
Thank you very much, Rich.
Good information. We love when you give good critiques like that.
Oh, excellent. It's my pleasure.
Yeah. Good. Well, thanks.
And I know Zoom meetings are weird, but it was really nice to see each of your faces. So I didn't mind it at all. It's nice to see you all in your homes.
Good.
Take care.
All right, everybody. I'll see you all next week. And have a good weekend.
Take care.
Bye.